Hey there. Ready for our final lesson on groundwater and water cycle? All right. So we're going to focus on infiltration versus runoff. So let's just break down the word. Infiltration has the word in. So water is going into the ground, and then it gets filtered by the rocks, which helps make it clean and pure, which is why groundwater is probably the best water to drink. And then we have runoff. Well, run means to move, and it's moving off the land. Instead of going into the land, it's running on the land. All right? So infiltration versus runoff. So they're pretty much opposite. So if infiltration increases, runoff decreases. So if the water can enter the ground, then it has no reason to move over the ground. All right? However, if water cannot infiltrate, if water can't infiltrate, so that means if water can't enter the ground, it must run off. And there could be various reasons why water can't enter the ground. Maybe the ground's impermeable, maybe it's saturated. All right, and we're going to discuss some of these reasons going forward. I just want to draw a graphing relationship. So let's say you have infiltration increasing. So if infiltration goes up, runoff goes down. All right? So the more infiltration, the less water can possibly run off. All right, now we're going to discuss several factors that really influence both of these. Because if you influence this one, infiltration, then you always influence runoff. And the first factor is something we already learned about, and that's permeability. Okay? So I'm going to make two little X and Y's here, and I'm going to have infiltration increasing to the right for both of them. And the graph on the left, I'm going to put, let me change that. I'm going to put permeability on both of them. So if the ground becomes more permeable, that will allow water to enter the ground a lot easier, which means infiltration will go up. So if permeability increases, infiltration increases. Which means if permeability increases, the water will have an easier time entering the ground, which means less water will run off. So permeability has a direct effect on infiltration, and permeability has an indirect effect on runoff. And if the ground is impermeable, then none of it can infiltrate, and it will only run off. So impermeable means no infiltration, which means you can only have runoff. Sorry, wish I had a bigger board. Got to write on a slant. All right? It's good to write on a slant. It means you're optimistic. You write up, you're optimistic. You write down, you're pessimistic. Is it pessimistic or pessimistic? I always mix them up. And if you write straight, then you see things the way they are. So I like to be optimistic. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this unit, but I always like to go on a tangent. So the next factor that's very important is slope of the land. So how steep the land is. So let's say slope here, and this side being steep, and this side being flat, okay, and infiltration, and then the same graph again. So we have slope, this time we have runoff. So if the slope increases here, all right? So if we're going from a flat surface to a steep surface, what will happen to infiltration? Well, if the ground's very flat, that would lead to more time for the water to sit there and eventually enter the ground. While if the ground's very steep, the water won't have time to enter the ground, so it will have an easier time to run off. So if the ground is flat, it has ability to infiltrate, and the steeper it is, the less it can infiltrate, which means the opposite here. So if the ground is, so here's flat, if it's flat, the water's not moving down the hill, so there isn't much runoff. But then if it's steep, there's a lot of runoff. So the steeper the slope, the more runoff, the flatter the slope, or the flatter the ground, the less runoff. Really, I should say the gentler the slope. So we did permeability, and now we just did slope. Another major one that sometimes gets overlooked is plant life or vegetation. Plants. Okay? Grasses, trees, bushes, they all have roots. And roots can affect porosity and permeability. Because what the roots do is they make openings. They can actually crack through rocks and move around the soil. So they actually create extra space in the soil or in the rock that might have not been there before the plant. So they actually increase infiltration, and by doing that, they decrease runoff. So I'm going to put a V for vegetation and an I for infiltration. So if there's a lot of plants, so like a forest, there'll be more infiltration. And if there's less plants, there'll be less infiltration. All right? But what if you cut all the plants down? So that will lead to runoff. So if you have very little plants, then the water's not going to have as much spaces in the soil or the rocks to enter the ground. Therefore, if there's very little plants, there'll be a lot of runoff. Right? But if there's a lot of plants or vegetation, that's what this V is for, there'll be less runoff. Okay? All right. Now, the last one, I guess, really isn't a factor because it doesn't really change the spacing of the pores or really the kind of ability for water to move through the pores. But if the ground is saturated, we wouldn't say that it's impermeable. However, if the ground is saturated, no more water will be allowed to enter. The water that's in the ground would still be moving through the ground, so don't mix this up. So if the ground is saturated, the ground is still permeable, but what happens now is since all the pore spaces are filled, no more water can infiltrate, so you can only have runoff. So saturation, what happens is infiltration will stop. This causes runoff. So if the ground is saturated, you'll have a lot of runoff. All right? That's basically the whole unit. I would go back and watch all the videos I put up, whether they're my lessons or other lessons I put up through YouTube or any animations. You're going to have two kind of quiz assignments, one tomorrow that I made through Google Forms, and then another one Monday which I'll post like a CASA learning quiz. All right? Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please email me if you have questions. Good night.